All right. So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Dr. Joseph Griffin. I am the Executive Director at Youth Alive here in Oakland. You're going to hear from myself and two of my colleagues who I want to thank for coming out today as well, Dr. Kyndra Simmons and David Muhammad. And thank you all for all of our colleagues and community that's here with us today. Today, violence prevention and intervention programs around the country are making our voices heard. And I want to be clear, this isn't about politics. This is about people. Defunding violence prevention and intervention programs puts lives at risk and destabilizes progress towards safer communities that have been made in many cities, including right here in Oakland, where rates of homicide and assault with a firearm decreased dramatically last year. Our message today is simple. Community violence intervention works. Fund it. At Youth Alive, we feel the crisis these federal funding cuts have caused. We lost $2 million in federal funding dedicated to supporting our hospital-based violence intervention program, Caught in the Crossfire. On the Crossfire is the nation's first and longest running program of its kind. In 2024, Caught in the Crossfire supported 113 survivors of community violence, from the hospital bedside through every step of their healing journey, with 99% of our participants not experiencing violent re-injury. With the federal funding cut, we will have to decrease our program capacity by 25%. Last year, that would have meant nearly 30 survivors of violence that we would not have the resources or the people power to support. 30 fewer opportunities to intervene and prevent retaliatory violence from occurring, and 30 fewer chances to make Oakland safer. As I said, this isn't about politics. It's about people. Cutting community violence intervention funding is a life or death issue, putting vital violence prevention and intervention programs at risk. So today we ask you to stand with us and share our message that CVI is worth investing in. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kyndra Simmons.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Kyndra Simmons, and I serve as the Senior Director of the Communities of Practice Division at the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention, also known as the HAVI. We are a national network that grew out of a vision born right here in Oakland, connecting hospital-based violence intervention programs, also known as HVIPs, with community partners to heal communities and interrupt cycles of violence. We now support over 100 programs across the country. We're standing on sacred ground, or some of you sitting, for the CVI field. Oakland and Youth Alive are where a movement began. The first HVIP Caught in the Crossfire didn't just launch a model, it actually sparked a movement, a national network. The HAVI itself was born right here in Oakland by gathering 9 or 10 multiple programs, HVIPs, back in 2009, a vision of bringing hospital staff together, clinicians, community leaders to talk about what healing-centered and community safety looks like. And it continues to drive us today. What's happening right now is a betrayal of public safety. This isn't just a funding cut. It's the dismantling of a national infrastructure that communities spent decades building. Over $150 million federal funding has been rescinded. That affects at least 65 organizations across 48 cities. And more terminations are arriving each day. This funding also made coordination across systems possible, linking hospitals, community organizations, law enforcement, and public health departments around shared trauma-informed strategies that save lives. Many of the people doing this work, credible messengers, violence intervention specialists, and survivors themselves. They're not just staff, they are the lifeblood of this movement. These cuts aren't just financial, they're personal and they're re-traumatizing. Let's be clear, this is not a partisan issue. It's about saving lives and marginalizing the full power of communities. from frontline workers and hospital teams to survivors and outreach leaders. Movements contract and expand, but we don't surrender. We've been here before. Community violence intervention existed long before we had funding or a name, and it will continue without it. But we need partners. If the federal government is stepping back, philanthropy, health systems, and local government must step up. Communities cannot do this alone. This movement is not the end. It's a call to recommit, to show up, to fight harder, and to never let anyone forget that community violence intervention saved lives. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is David Mohammed. I am the Executive Director of the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, NICJR. We are a national organization, but we're based right here in Oakland, California. We work throughout the country, but also here at home as well. And I just want to emphasize the incredibly important points that my colleagues have made. After the onset of the COVID pandemic, violence in this country increased significantly. And there was a response by federal and national government. And there was the bipartisan Safer Communities Act passed by Congress, both Republicans and Democrats coming together to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That one of the many incredible things this piece of legislation did was create the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative. That funded community-based organizations around the country to be in community, to intervene in gun violence, to support individuals who are victimized by gun violence, to stop the retaliatory nature of gun violence. And that includes right here in Oakland. There were intermediaries like NICJR, where we received money to be able to give organizations around the country who don't have the capability to apply for federal grants that require 50-page proposals, so that they can get money to do the work in their community. And all of that was eliminated overnight by this administration, eliminating a bipartisan effort to reduce gun violence. At NICJR, we lost 4 federal grants, totaling $5.5 million, about $3.2 million of which we had not accessed yet, that we lost overnight. Those 4 grants, one is a replication of an Oakland program called the Neighborhood Opportunity and Accountability Board, where young people who have been identified and even arrested are diverted from justice involvement through deep, intensive intervention in community. This we partner with the Oakland Police Department on. Police department agencies around the country that this administration says that they want to be in support of. This is our partner with a bunch of community-based organizations, and we were replicating this very successful Oakland program in another Bay Area city. The other initiative is the CVI-PI, the Community Violence Intervention and Prevention Initiative, where we were able to give grants to 5 local community-based organizations around the country. Right here in Oakland, that includes Courage, the Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice. And that grant was eliminated, in addition to the technical assistance support, the training, the administrative capacity building that we were able to provide and we're providing to these organizations. The other 2 grants that got cut were around working with local justice agencies to help develop continuums of care to provide supports to young people in the justice system to help them not return to incarceration, not return to juvenile delinquency. The sham of these terminations is that the information provided to all of us whose grants were terminated was inaccurate. The information provided said that these grants were being terminated because they do not align with the goals of public safety, reducing crime, and saving and protecting America's children. These grants achieve exactly those goals. So the cutting and termination of these goals is actually harming public safety, harming communities, harming children. What this administration claims they're trying to protect, these terminations do the exact opposite. And so in communities across the country, in Oakland, several organizations, this federal funding, this American taxpayer dollars going for public safety were terminated. And we are continuing to do this work. The Youth Alive and the HAVI and NICJR and other organizations in Oakland and throughout the country continue to do this life-saving work with less resources, less support that needs to be reinstated. I'll just lastly say that these grants, $800 million in grants from the Department of Justice were eliminated. A large amount of that was specifically for community violence intervention, going into communities to work with people victimized by crime, to reduce the likelihood of retaliation by having intensive intervention in community with individuals. There is no better work than the saving of lives. And these funds specifically contributed to the saving of lives. That is what was terminated. That was what was eliminated by this administration. So we thank all of those who are gathered here today, both community members, fellow community-based organizations who also are impacted by these terminations, members of the media. We are now going to just open it up for any questions, first from any members of the media, then any members of the community who have come as well. And again, we thank you for your time and your support, and we'll take any questions that anyone might have.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Rosa Romero. I'm the public safety reporter for the Oakland side. So in the email that you all obtained from the Department of Justice, they said that organizations affected by these grant terminations can appeal. What are each of your organizations' thought process around appealing the terminations? Have you submitted an appeal yet? And are you optimistic at all about the restoration of those funds?
I'll start it. We can. As you said, everyone who received the termination notice were also informed that they had, I think, 30 days to submit an appeal. And there is a lot of discussion in the country around, is this appeal process real? Should there just be a litigation strategy? Should there be a political strategy? And not a lot of hope that any of these avenues would have near-term access to reinstating these grants. We hope that the administration is sincere, because if the appeal process is true and honored, these grants are not in violation of the goals of public safety, reducing crime, and protecting America's children. So if there is a sincere appeal process, then we would expect these grants to be reinstated. And I think we will see that. And so for NICJR, we are developing an appeal while we are also aligning with our partners nationally to also have a national day of action, as this is today. We also want to make sure we're having this press conference and discussion here in Oakland. Cities across the country are doing it simultaneously as we are here today. And there is a national effort to work together to say, we need American taxpayer dollars. Our money needs to be reinstated to work toward reducing violence. And so we are both working on an appeal, but also working with our partners to see what a litigation and advocacy strategy looks like. Any other questions, or if any other partners want to talk about the appeal process or not?
I think that was a very comprehensive answer.
Yes.
And you know, the only thing I would add is that regardless of how hopeful we feel or not, we owe it to the communities that we serve, that we love, that we're from, to fight in any way we can to make sure that these resources get restored.
Both either members of the media or community who came and joined us who either want to ask a question, or certainly members of the community who want to share as well. We don't want to take people longer than they need to be, because if we hearing none, seeing that, I'll ask my colleagues for any kind of closing remarks. And if there are no questions either from media or from community members, we could also wrap this up. Any closing thoughts?
You know, just the only thing I really want to highlight something that Dr. Simmons said, and it's in this moment, we have to be in it together. That's how we got here. It's not just the folks doing the work in this room, but it's the funders and the donors and the advocates that have helped us build this field, that have helped us stand there for our communities when they need us. And so more than ever, we got to go back to our roots, and that's how we're going to get through this.
What Joe said. And I'll be completely honest, because this is a movement that has happened, and those who have been involved in this field have been doing this work for years. I'm someone who's been doing this work for nearly 30 years, and we've been here before. So it's time again to recommit. And to know that we're not doing this work alone. We've done this work, again, countless years, and we've been literally at this point before. And I have to just say, it just feels more disrespectful now, and it feels more distrusting of the government more than it ever has felt before. So again, it's just now time to recommit and to know that folks are not alone in doing this. We just have to work harder and also learn to trust each other in doing this work together and know that we move forward together and we're stronger together.
And a couple points. I know we have a question. I want to make one. Kyndra makes a wonderful point that many of the people doing this work in community are people who have been formerly incarcerated, who transformed their lives, changed their lives, and are now serving as an example to others to help them make the similar good decisions and desist from a life of crime and violence. These are individuals from the communities that they grow up in and the experiences that they have naturally have suspicion of government. And to say, I'm going to work in this program funded by government, which we all know for many of those folks that do the work on the ground is a little difficult for us to convince them to do that. And then to have the rug pulled from under them to fulfill that suspicion that folks had about government has deep implications even beyond these grants of the harm that this is committing in communities. And so we have a lot to contemplate around how much harm directly to the programs, to the people being served, but then also to the staff, some of whom have had to be laid off across the country and in Oakland. And what harm are we doing to individuals and to communities, not just to organizations receiving these grants? Second point, just technical, I want to make sure to point out is there's kind of two parts of this violation. One is a lot of the organizations, like all of ours, are just owed money right now, meaning services have been rendered. And by virtue of how government works with these grants, you submit an invoice after work has happened. So we're actually simply owed, some of us 3 months of work, 4 months of work, a lot of money that we put forth already, right? So these funds have already been spent by our organizations that we are owed reimbursement for. So that should be an easy one. They literally owe us. And even the letter from the federal government says that. It says, starting on the date you received the email, this is when the work stops. Okay, well, there's a ton of work you have not paid us for. And when many of us went into the portal to recoup what is owed to us, that it was shut down and we could not submit the invoices to get the money that we were already owed. The second part of that is we're in the middle of grant cycles. And it is a breach of contract to say you're having this grant taken from you for reasons that are inaccurate, right? And so there's two parts of this violation that we here in Oakland, but across the country have also experienced. And Gabriel.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that are tuning in, hearing this for the first time or learning about the developments are wondering, what can we do? What can we do about this? So I'm curious if there's ways that you all can think of how your fellow Oaklanders, community members, other organizations can support you in this time, especially as you're looking at a comprehensive strategy on how to respond.
I'll briefly say, get the word out, right? Share this information, amplify, post, all those social media terms I don't know, but we need to get the word out about this. One other thing I'll say is in this tight community, we say the acronym CVI, and everybody in this room knows we're talking about. Outside of this room, nobody has any idea what the heck that means. So we need to raise awareness on what community violence intervention is, what it does, how it works, and how it was violated in terms of these grants taken away. So really get the word.
Yeah, and I would add that last year, Oakland voters overwhelmingly showed that they support community violence intervention programs through the passage of Measure NN. So making sure that those resources that are meant to support our programs actually hit our programs is going to be necessary to make sure that our programs continue. And then to also think about what at the state level we could do to support the opportunities that we have to keep this work going.
And I would just also add that when we're talking about getting the word out, we're also talking about protecting another workforce. Mm-hmm. Community violence intervention is also another workforce for those who have been formerly incarcerated, who have come to the front lines to actually heal the communities. So they heal their own communities. So when we talk about protecting CVI, we're also protecting a newly developed workforce that we have all fought for years to develop. So think about that as well and help to understand this is a workforce that contributes to public safety. And they're individuals from their own communities that are providing healing to individuals in their own community. So creating a whole nother workforce as well. And so we have to protect that workforce and the individuals who are within that workforce.
Hello, everybody. John Jones III for the record. Y'all knew I was going to ask a question. I want to start by, first of all, thanking each of you for your decades of service and leadership to the community. And my question for the three of you, what message would you give to the American people? And this is what I mean. First of all, I want to appreciate Joe. You mentioned this is not political. Kyndra, this is not partisan. David, these are taxpayer dollars. The current defense spending is $893 billion. The current president is seeking to increase that to over $1 trillion for next year, right? That signifies an increase of over $100 billion. While at the same time, this current slash in funding is close to $1 billion. We've heard a lot of voters say America first. That premise has also informed the decisions people made in this election. So again, what message would you give to the American people to get them to understand how this work is truly America first?
Yeah, I'll start with a great question. Thank you, John. A couple of things. One, to reemphasize, right? This is our money, right? This is American taxpayer dollars that was going toward what our representatives in Congress wanted it to go toward, which is public safety. And those dollars were achieving that goal. I said earlier that after the onset of the COVID pandemic, you saw gun violence go up. But in the last 2 to 3 years, gun violence has gone down significantly. Joe talked about in Oakland last year, there was a 33% reduction in homicides and non-fatal shootings. A lot of that is because of these community violence intervention efforts. Around the country, you have cities who had record lows and shootings last year. And a lot of that is attributable, even those mayors and police chiefs in those cities will attribute, including Oakland, will attribute that to community violence intervention efforts. And so when you say America first, the goal stated in the termination notice said that they wanted this to go to reducing crime or improving public safety. That's what we were doing. Right, that is specifically the outcomes that these grants were achieving, and why, in any sincere review process, these would be reinstated.
And I'll just say again, if we're talking about the taxpayers' dollars and everything that this contributes to, we also are protecting a workforce. And if you think about everything in terms of community violence intervention, what we're doing in terms of in individual communities, the folks that are working in individual communities, this is a workforce that's doing two things. You're employing individuals who probably wouldn't be employed. They have a specific skill set. So that's one aspect of it. But then also, to David's point, we're reducing crime also. So there are two things. So you're contributing to the workforce, the economy, and you're also reducing crime. So there are two things that are happening. CVI in itself, it does two things for America. So I think that in itself is important.
Yeah, and I think I'll speak a little bit more close to home about Oakland, where public safety is, and has been one of our biggest priorities. But what does that actually mean? Is what we're looking for is we all want communities where safety and health are guaranteed, regardless of where we live, work, or play. And regardless of where you live in Oakland, that holds true. And I think with that, that's unique to Oakland that folks have to understand is that for generations, we've had high levels of violence. And that trauma crosses across generations. So a part of our work, as much as it is about intervening on violence in the short term, it's also about how do we help our community heal. And that's what these programs do. It may be the unseen part of our work, but it is an essential piece of our work. And so for folks in Oakland who truly want that safe and healing and healthy community, this is what we need these programs for.
Oh, yeah. Okay. If I know we're 1 minute over. If there's no other last question, then we want to thank everybody who joined us today. Thank my colleagues and really encourage all of us, as we said earlier, to share this, right? To share this information to folks who would not normally plug into these issues, so that we can raise awareness in Oakland and around the country. Thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon.